Recently, I found a cool new piece of cycling infrastructure at Potsdamer Platz here in Berlin. Underneath the Sony Center is a large garage for bike parking. I've heard these referred to as bike loops, but I'm not quite sure if that's the right term for this thing. This place had some features that piqued my interest, especially as it relates to accessibility. It also raised some interesting questions about how Berliners use bikes. So this place is kind of below ground, which means that it kind of has an immediate barrier to entry compared to just locking your bike on the street. Moreover, there isn't an elevator that's accessible from the street. Instead, the only way to get to the garage is down a flight of stairs. For me, this isn't really that big of a deal. I'm relatively young and fit, so carrying my bike up and down a flight of stairs is pretty trivial. For others, though, this could be a barrier that would prevent them from using a facility. Perhaps you have an e-bike or a cargo bike, or you have some sort of mobility issue that prevents you from carrying your bike at all. The staircase alleviates some of these accessibility issues with a special brush-equipped ramp for going down and a magic carpet kind of conveyor belt thing for going up. Now, a lot of staircases have a little ramp that allows you to roll your bike up and down, but the issue with these systems is that you have to expend a decent amount of energy preventing your bike from rolling away from you. This staircase addresses this by adding these inward-facing brushes that go down the entire length of the staircase. This sounds a little weird, but in addition to cleaning your tire sidewalls, the brushes create friction which prevent your bike from rolling away from you as you go down the stairs. For my bike, this meant that I actually had to push my bike ever so gently down the ramp. I think this brush-equipped ramp is a win for accessibility. Now someone who might not have had the strength to roll their bike down the staircase ramp can control their bike's descent with very little effort. On the way up, the staircase has a narrow conveyor belt that pulls your bike up the staircase. It works as follows. As you approach the staircase, the conveyor belt turns on. Then you line your bike up with the ramp and place the front wheel on the belt. Squeeze the front brake, and voila! Your bike starts to slowly scoot upwards. Instead of having to push your bike up the ramp while making sure it doesn't fall over, you now only have to stabilize it. This is also a big win for accessibility, as it makes it so a broader range of people can use the facility. I think these two features highlight an interesting aspect of accessibility. For a lot of us, when we think of accessibility, we think of designing things such that people in wheelchairs can use them. This is definitely true, but I like to think of it a little more broadly. Accessibility means designing things such that as many people as possible can use something. The bike facility staircase is distinctly not wheelchair accessible, but it is accessible to more people than if it were just a set of stairs. Now, the facility is accessible to a person with a cargo bike and a couple of kids, or an older gentleman wielding an e-bike. Inside the parking area itself, which sort of feels like Tron Legacy decided to host a pride party, bikes can be stacked on top of each other. I don't think getting your bike up to the top ramp is necessarily easy, but it's definitely not as hard as just lifting your bike all the way to what for me is shoulder height. As you can see, after pulling the bike out and lowering it down, you sort of roll your bike onto the rack, lever it up, and then push it back in. The bike parking area has a few other features of note. First, they have these metal loops sticking out of the bottom rack. These are there so you can lock your bike frame to something solid instead of just your wheels. Honestly, bike wraps that encourage you to just lock your wheels are worse than leaving your bike locked to itself. Stealing everything except for the front wheel is shamefully easy. The second thing is the dedicated bike lockers. We didn't take a close look at the payment system for this, but it seems like it could be cool for long-term parking or if you're a commuter looking for a little bit of extra peace of mind. All in all, I feel like this facility is designed with commuters in mind, not for folks who are just popping into Dunkin' Donuts. There is a barrier to entry compared to just locking your bike on the street. You have to zero in on the parking area and take your bike all the way downstairs. I think this place is intended for people who work at Potsdamer Platz, or for people who take regional trains into the city center from other parts of Berlin or Brandenburg and want to use their bike to commute the last few kilometers to their office. This second group of people might leave their bike locked up in the facility overnight. Knowing that your bike is in a CCTV monitored bike parking area that isn't open 24 hours a day might allow for better sleep. Speaking a little more broadly, places like this indicate to me that Berlin is taking cycling seriously as a legitimate form of commuting. Generally speaking, Berlin is a pretty good place to ride a bike, but I think there are some significant issues with the city's cycling infrastructure, and it's heartening to see facilities like this pop up. Perhaps we can get into more of those issues in another video.